Hello, I'm Sasha, and for this presentation, we will go over succession planting at the DH Urban Farm. The goal of this style of planting is to have something edible growing at all times. Succession planting is when you stagger multiple crops in the same area throughout the season, so you have varying maturing dates. Once one section is harvested, a new edible plant is planted, and the process is continued. It is this process that allows for a continued harvest throughout the year. There are 4 general methods you can use for succession planting. The first is using the same vegetable, but you space out plantings every 2 to 4 weeks. Many vegetables fade after producing their initial crop, setting a heavy yield initially, then smaller and smaller yields throughout the summer. Rather than planting your entire row of beans all at once and having feast or famine, you can plant part of the row at the beginning of the season and then plant more in a few weeks later on, so a new crop will be continually coming in. As the first plants start to decrease in yield, you can replant that area with the same plant or use it for a different crop. The second method involves different vegetables. Some crops, such as peas, have short growing seasons, and the space they were using can be replanted with a later season crop like eggplant. This technique works well with a number of different vegetables like beets, kale, green onions, radish, and more. The third method is intercropping, or pairing up plants. Often you can seed the early season vegetable at the same time you are planting. This is an excellent way to squeeze even more productivity from your vegetable garden. Finally, you can use the same vegetable that has different maturity rates, and an easy way to keep your harvest coming in is to choose more than one variety of a crop and make them early, mid, and late season varieties. The different maturity dates should be labeled on the seed packets. This works for pole beans, broccoli, carrots, melon, tomatoes, corn, and a number of other veggies. Now we're going to watch part of a video on succession planting.
Make the most of your kitchen garden and you can enjoy multiple harvests from a single patch of ground in any given growing season. The secret, of course, lies in careful planning, sowing the right crops at the right time to enjoy a succession of delicious harvests. In this video, we'll show you how.
Succession cropping is the sowing or planting of one crop immediately after an earlier crop is finished in order to achieve a succession of harvests. Growing like this not only maximises productivity, ensuring more for you to eat, but maintaining soil cover with the leaves and roots of crops also provides fewer opportunities for weeds, while protecting the ground from the eroding effects of wind and heavy rain. Many vegetables need only half the growing season to reach harvest time, leaving plenty of fine weather to start off a crop that will either be harvested before the end of the season or remain in the ground to give a crop over the winter or spring. Vegetables finished early enough for a successional crop include French beans, many salads, early potatoes and carrots, onions and garlic, and beetroot. For most gardeners, the height of summer sees these first crops cleared to make way for the second crops of the season. These vegetables will be able to take advantage of the warm soil and high light levels to quickly grow away. Having cleared the first crop, clean the ground of any weeds, then use a rake to break up any clumps and tamp the soil down before raking flat. Good, rich soil that had organic matter added for the previous crop shouldn't require any more, but if your soil does need a boost, now's the time to add a thin layer of compost before sowing or planting. Speed is of the essence, so aim to have young plants or seeds ready to go in immediately after the first crop is cleared. That way, you'll make the most of the valuable warmth that remains this summer. What you can grow depends on the length of your growing season, with gardeners in warmer climates having longer to grow before winter arrives. With precious time remaining, some crops may need to be planted out as young plants from sowings made earlier on, or from store-bought plug plants, also known as transplants. These include many of the brassicas, such as kale, cabbage and cauliflower, plus the likes of Florence fennel or bulbing fennel, beetroot and lettuce. Here's a list of crops to grow on from young plants. Some may be harvested before winter, while others will give a modest crop during the cold months before coming into their own in spring. If you want to start a second crop from seed now, then try any of the oriental vegetables such as pak choi, plus chard and herbs like parsley and cilantro, also known as coriander. Many salad leaves respond well to shortening days, including endive, spinach and arugula or rocket. Here's a list of crops to sow direct. Planning your successional sowings and
All right, the remainder of the video talks about how to best organize your crops by using this computer program to help you keep track of when and where you should plant different plants. However, at our farm, we are only working with a single raised bed, so organizing plants shouldn't be too difficult. The hardest thing with succession planting, aside from actually growing your crops, is deciding what to plant in the first place. To help narrow it down a bit, you can split vegetables into two categories: warm season plants and cool season plants. Warm season plants should be planted when the soil temperature is about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and they will grow best if the air temperature is relatively warm, between 65 and 86 degrees. Some warm season crops include, but are not limited to, these listed at the bottom, such as cucumber, pepper, and watermelon. For cool season crops like Brussels sprouts, carrots, and spinach, the planting temperature should be no colder than 40 degrees, and they will grow best when the temperatures are around 70. They typically stop producing when the daytime temperatures get too hot or the quality of the produce significantly drops. Many cool season crops can be sown in the early spring and again in the fall, but keep in mind that they must be planted early enough to reach maturity before it gets too cold. The fun thing about succession planting is you can mix up your crops each time, and by rotating families of crops, you will also help avoid disease. Again, the point of this demonstration bed is to show visitors how to sustainably produce food year-round, so you always have something to eat, ideally without overproducing, which leads to waste. We are lucky to be located in California because our warm climate gives us a longer growing season. On this slide, you will see the Southern California vegetable planting schedule that lists a lot of different veggies and the best and worst time of year to plant them. As you can see, some crops like beets, radishes, and carrots are fine to plant year-round, whereas jicama and winter zucchini have a much smaller window of when you can plant them. Displaying succession planting at the DH Urban Farm is really important because it is one of the best strategies for maximizing crop yields in a small space. We live in a very urban environment here in LA, and that means most people only have a limited amount of space to grow their own food. Succession planting is a great example of sustainable agriculture and will ensure access to crops throughout the season. And again, this is very important because Dominguez Hills is located in a food desert, and this way of gardening can really help combat food insecurity. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned a lot about succession planting and the crops you can grow using this method. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with the DH Urban Farm or the Sustainability Office over phone or email. And don't forget to visit the succession planting demonstration bed at the DH Urban Farm.